Hello and welcome to Kelly's Wordy Reactions. Okay, so I wanted to bring to you Mrs. Smalls Combs' full statement that she wrote for and about her son, the famous and now very infamous Sean Diddy Combs. So I'm going to go ahead and read her statement with commentary. So I will be stopping and interjecting wherever I see fit. So if you do want to read this in its entirety, I'm sure there are many places you can go to online. I am reading this from the online media outlet newsnationnow.com. So if you want to read this where I'm reading it from, please go to newsnation.com. Otherwise, if you choose to listen to me, I will be stopping and putting in my very wordy reactions here and there. Okay? All right. Here we go. Okay. I come to you today as a mother that is devastated and profoundly saddened by the allegations made against my son, Sean Combs. Okay. I hear you, Mrs. Combs. I certainly can feel your pain there as a mother. All right. It is heartbreaking to see my son judged, not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies. Now, this right here, very early in her writing, is where I completely break off from her and just totally blank and black out. What in the world do you mean, Mrs. Smalls Combs, by saying that you're heartbroken to see your son judged for not the truth, but a narrative created out of lies? First of all, people have opinions. You have people out here who are alleging that they are victims of him. And then you have people who he has paid in settlements, who he agreed to some extent or another that they were that he owed them to make them whole, or to do his best to rectify a situation, so because of something that he did or took or something. Like, there's some reason why you settle and give people money for something that they said that you did to them. And then to just go ahead and put the icing on the cake, and also with like several cherries on top, we see the video of him stomping down his girlfriend in the same fashion that she alleged in the lawsuit. And all of a sudden, the allegation came from, well, it's just her word against his, all the way to the forefront where you could see every single detail of what she said that he did to her. So, Mrs. Smalls Combs, you might be heartbroken because that's your son, but be heartbroken because of your son's actions. Don't be heartbroken and delude yourself into thinking that people have their opinions about your son, not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies, because him stomping in that hallway by that elevator, that was not a narrative. That was what happened. And if we're creating a narrative based on that, well, that's the facts. That's the facts. That's the undisputed facts. And yes, we can only judge, have an opinion, and use our imagination about all the things that happened that we didn't see, that we weren't privy to, and may never be privy to seeing. But I know one thing, he didn't look like a man that was his first rodeo. And as horrific as it was, he didn't appear that was his first rodeo. So be heartbroken that your son is that type of person, Mrs. Smalls Combs. Don't be heartbroken that people are creating a narrative out of lies, because if it was only that one thing, that certainly wasn't a lie. And he had some reason, before anybody even ever saw a tape or knew a tape was surfacing, he had some reason for paying that woman several millions of undisclosed funds. Okay, let's keep going. To bear witness to what seems to be like a public lynching of my son before he has had the opportunity to prove his innocence is a pain too unbearable to put into words. Ma'am, the Federal Bureau of Investigations and the Homeland Security of the United States of America had reason to believe that this man was doing things that interest them. They went and got the proof that they needed via raiding his properties, which, living in this country, that is something that they have the right to do. And they got what they got. It appears to have been enough to find probable cause to go and pick him up and make an arrest. And now he sits in the jail there in New York. What do you mean? What do you mean, Mrs. Smalls Combs? What exactly are you trying to say? This happens every day. I mean, maybe not every day, but probably enough. I mean, this is happening all the time somewhere in the United States. People do things, and they get found out. The authorities go pick them up and they put them in jail, and they either give them a bond or they don't, and they either get out until it's time for their trial, or they stay in there until their case can be heard. And then they either get acquitted or they get found guilty, and whatever happens next. What are you talking about? To bear witness to what seems to be like a public lynching of your son before he has the opportunity to prove his innocence is a pain too unbearable to put into words. I mean, if something like this becomes your son is who he is. Of course it's going to be public. Of course it's going to be quite the spectacle. Look at what he's being accused of. Again, you know, I've never even heard of Mrs. Smalls Combs. I certainly haven't seen her out here fighting for the rights of anybody else, trying to change the justice system of the United States. So it was okay for you all these other years when anybody else was getting in trouble and going to jail. But now it's a public lynching to talk about somebody who is going to stand trial for some allegations. That's a public lynching. I mean, of course it's a spectacle. He's a spectacle, whether he's in trouble or not. He's enjoyed all these years of being famous and a very outgoing, famous person. So something of this magnitude, yeah, it's going to be very public. It's it's going to be quite the spectacle. If something like this, if somebody would have said something like this could have happened, of course it's going to be outrageous. But look at the allegations. I mean, it's crazy. So to want everybody to shut up just because it's your son, no. I mean, and like I said, I've never heard her out here fighting for anybody else's rights, for everybody to sit down and shut up, no media coverage, everybody stop talking about, whatever it is that's going on. I've never seen her fighting for anything. He's not going to be any different. As a matter of fact, because he is one of the most public celebrities that there is right now, then this is really what you would expect, especially because of everything that has occurred. Let's see. Like every human being, my son deserves to have his day in court, and he will. He will. He'll have his day in court unless he gets taken out of here some kind of unfortunate way before then. But he'll have his day in court. Nobody is denying him his day in court. Just because people are talking, that doesn't mean he won't have his day in court. Okay. To finally share his side and to prove his innocence. So be it. So be it. Of course. I don't think anybody wants people to not have their day in court. Just because people are talking about all of what's going on doesn't mean that anybody wants anyone to not have their day in court. Why? Because we all want our rights should we need them. Nobody is trying to take his day in court away. She says, I am not here to portray my son as a perfect person because he is not. Okay, I'm glad you are at least giving him that. My son may not have been entirely truthful about certain things, such as denying he has ever gotten violent with an ex-girlfriend when the hotel surveillance showed otherwise. Okay. But if you realize that he lied about that thing, as serious as it was and as documented as it was, he just thought that, nobody would ever know about the documentation. But if he would lie about that, then what makes you think that we are not smart enough to believe that he could lie about something else? Okay, let's go on. Sometimes the truth and a lie become so closely intertwined that it becomes terrifying to admit one part of the story, especially when that truth is outside the norm or is too complicated to be believed. Now, Miss Smalls Combs, baby, you sound like a con artist. You sound like a con artist, miss. You sound like you trying to get us to believe. What did Cat Williams say? He said, anytime somebody's trying to get you to believe something that we've never heard before, they running a play. Miss Smalls Combs, you is running a damn play. What the hell are you saying? This don't even make no sense. Sometimes the truth and a lie become so closely intertwined that it becomes terrifying to admit one part of the story, especially when that truth is outside the norm or too complicated to be believed. Girl, shut up. You sound like a pimp. You sound like a pimp. This sound like a lie. This sound like something that nobody's ever heard. And therefore, we know that you is trying to run a play. I'm just trying to figure out, who is you trying to run this play on? Who are you talking to? Because the world ain't this stupid. This is for some people that, I don't know, somebody that's slow. This is a play that you're trying to run, and it's not even a very good one. This is why I believe my son's civil legal team opted to settle the ex-girlfriend's lawsuit instead of contesting it until the end, resulting in a ricochet effect as the federal government used this decision against my son by interrupting it as an admission of guilt, or by interpreting it as an admission of guilt. The federal government was going to ricochet whether he had settled like he did or not, because once she said everything that she said, it was out there for everybody and, their ancestors to hear. And yeah, it was going to ricochet no matter what, right on up into the federal investigators' offices. Yeah, because what she said, and not only what she said, but what Lil Rod said, and maybe even some other people's lawsuits indicated, was going to find their way to those federal investigators. And whether he had settled with her or went on and went to court, which of course he didn't want to do, because he didn't want all those things to keep being said over and over and over and over. He was trying to hurry up and shut it down. But once she spoke, it was out. And once it was out, somebody heard it. And it went right on up. And I believe with Lil Rod, how he said what he said and reinforced what Cassie had said, and maybe even some others. It was, he didn't have to say he was guilty or not. He didn't even have to settle it. When Cassie said what she said, that ended it. Know how they said, I said what I said, and that settles it? That ended it, because once that was all out, it could not be ignored. So if he hadn't settled it, he was still going to have to go to court on it. And it was going to be talked about and talked about and talked about and talked about. And it was going to the federal investigations, no matter what he said, no matter what he did. Let's see. It is important to recognize that none of us, regardless of our status, are immune to fear or mistakes. Girl, don't bring us into it. Don't bring us into it, because we don't have nothing to do with this. Don't bring us into it. Whenever we got to do whatever we got to do, then that'll be when we doing that. But right now, this is Diddy and his business and his dealings and his criminal charges and his cases and his money and all of that. That's all you need to worry about. Don't worry about trying to bring in the people so the folk can start feeling, what did you say, fear, and thinking about their mistakes. This don't have nothing to do with us. Keep this focus right where it needs to be, on him. Don't try to deflect. Don't try to put it back on us. Don't try to have us thinking, oh, no. This is what he has to do right now. And when it comes to other people and what they got to do, they'll handle that at that time. This don't have to do with anybody but him and what his choices and decisions. So this right here is another play. And none of us signed up to play no games with him. Okay. Not being entirely straightforward about one issue does not mean my son is guilty of the repulsive allegations and the grave charges leveled against him. Okay, well, tell the federal investigators. Why are you telling us? Many individuals who were wrongfully convicted and later exonerated had their freedom taken from them, not because they were guilty of the crimes they were accused of, but because they didn't fit the image of what this society considers to be a good person. Girl, another play. How many plays is this now? 3. 3 plays. History has showed us how individuals can be wrongfully convicted due to their past actions or mistakes. We're not going, Miss Smalls Combs. We just not going. You need to go up there and get on the, witness list so you can take the stand and try to see, can you defend your son? But otherwise, why are you telling us? Why are you telling us, the public? I mean, this doesn't make us a bit of difference. We're not on the jury. We're not the ones making no decisions about your son. But you know who was making decisions about your son? Your son. Your son. With his super grown behind. He was making decisions for his life all these 54 years. So if it's anybody you need to be talking to about past actions and mistakes and all this type of stuff, it should be your son. Watching the world make jokes and laugh at my son's life crumbling before our eyes is something I can never forget. That's very interesting, because how many people did you watch and laugh at that were associated with your son and had dealings with your son? That's very interesting. I find it really impossible, really, to believe that nobody ever brought a grievance to you about your son. How did you handle it when people told you, or when you knew about what things how your son had done them? I find it very interesting that you are finding it hard to see the world make jokes and laugh at your son. But what were you doing when you knew he was messing over people? It is truly agonizing to watch the world turn against my son so quickly and easily over lies and misconceptions without ever hearing his side or affording him the opportunity to present his side. Well, that's another, this lady is a con artist. This lady is a straight up and down con artist, because Diddy had all of his life to portray himself a different way. And this is not the first time after he got into this trouble that people were having things to say about how he was and the things that he was doing. So I don't even think that anybody has turned on him so quickly and easily. I think that people have always had a lot to say about him, but Miss Smalls Combs just probably seems to me like she didn't care about any of it, as long as times were good and he was up and things were rolling, and they probably just, laughed and shook the haters off. But now that he's locked up and things are looking down, you want everybody to shut up, stop laughing, don't talk about him. And, everybody, the whole world just turn over another leaf about your son, when like I said, I never heard of Mrs. Smalls Combs while he was good and everything, times were good, things were rolling. Never heard a word out of her. And yeah, he didn't have the opportunity to present his side. That's just not true. That's just not true. He could have came out and talked his side every day. He could have got on his Instagram. He could have got on Facebook. He could have got on YouTube. He could have got on Twitter. He could have talked his side every day. This man said very, very, very minimal things. Probably because of, from his lawyers and everything else. But don't tell us that he didn't have the opportunity to do something. He could have did anything he wanted to do. He did what he did. He said very little. He said minimal things about anything that was important. He came out here to sell his products and to sell his narrative. And that's how he used his time. So he had time. He didn't choose to use it like that. These lies thrown at him are motivated by financial gain and not justice. Well, I don't think the Fed, I don't think him being locked up by the federal government or Homeland Security or whoever has him detained, I don't think they care about financial gain. I don't think they're getting any of his millions of dollars. I think they're just locking somebody up because they have criminal allegations, and that's what they do. These individuals saw how quickly my son's civil legal team settled his ex-girlfriend's lawsuit, so they believe they can receive a quick payday by falsely accusing my son. False allegations of sexual assault thwart true victims of sexual violence from getting the justice they deserve. That's very interesting. So are you saying that there's people who were truly assaulted that are not going to get their payday from your son Diddy because it's fake people out there making their allegations? I don't no, just don't. That don't seem like a good thing to say, Miss Smalls Combs. To make matters worse, the federal government is now using these lies to prosecute my son. This injustice has been unbearable for our family. The worst part of this ordeal is watching my beloved son be stripped of his dignity, not for what he did, but for what people choose to believe about him. Yeah, I don't think that's why they're stripping him of his clothes and making him put on a jumpsuit and, whatever else the process is, locking him behind the doors and giving him a funny looking toilet and, making him eat bologna or whatever it is that they serve in there. I don't think that's why they're doing it. I think they're doing it because they have some proof of some illegal activity, and it was on the level of beyond the state, and so that is why they came to understand what was being alleged against him, and then they went to see if there was any proof, and then they found some proof, and then they went to arrest him. So not for what he did. That's another play, because now all this has to be still, proven out, and, it still has to be hashed out in court, and it's, he still has to be found guilty. But they have found some probable cause, Miss Smalls Combs. You can't keep saying not for what he did. He provided them with some probable cause. he did, or else they would have never went to get him. So, she says, I asked his supporters. I'm not sure who that is at this point. I'm really not. It doesn't look like anybody. Not one person. I ain't heard of nobody standing up for Diddy in these, ever since that video came out, when that man ran out there like a cheetah and into that elevator bay and grabbed that vase and chunked it and chunked the woman across the room and, use his feet and hands and everything else. I ain't seen nobody supporting this dude right here. Now, it might be some supporters. I'm not all over everywhere. I can't see everybody's content and everything. But his supporters, I ain't seen none. I think his people are too scared that they might get something blamed on them. I think people are too scared, even if they do like him, even if they don't like women, even if they don't like getting caught. I don't know. Even if I don't know that he has any supporters. If he does, they're probably very, very, very silent. I asked his supporters, fans, colleagues. Yeah, you asking a lot. Friends and the public to not judge him before you've had the chance to hear his side. I already spoke on that. I beg you to think about those who have been wrongfully persecuted, to remember that not everyone who has made mistakes in life deserves to have their entire existence judged by single actions or a few mistakes. Girl, get out of town. Get out of town, Miss Ma'am. My son is not the monster they have painted him to be, and he deserves a chance to tell his side, and he will. What is wrong? What makes her think that he's not going to have his day in court if he wants it, if he doesn't settle, if he doesn't go for some type of plea bargain that they offer him or whatnot and whatever? He's going to get to go to trial if that's what the avenue that he's going to take. Everybody gets to have a trial if they want one. I don't know what makes her think otherwise. As far as people having their opinions, that one you're not going to stop, Mrs. Smalls Combs. That's just, I don't know who told you that this was a good idea, but it's utterly ridiculous. It's utterly, and it's going to have the opposite effect. I don't know if that's what you are trying to do, but nobody will speak less. Nobody will. If anything, people will speak more. Every time that you give them an inch, they're going to make it into a mile of content. So that's just the fact. So in closing, again, she says, my son is not the monster that's interesting, that he maybe has painted himself to be. Who is they? This is all coming straight from him. And he deserves a chance to tell his side, and yeah, he'll get it. I can only pray that I am alive to see him speak his truth and be vindicated. Janice Smalls Combs. I think I said everything I had to say while I was reading this atrocity. This is atrocious. Miss Janice, she's a con artist. She's not even a very good one. It's kind of like trying to play a game that you don't really know how to play, but yet you're trying to play with confidence and act like you know what you're doing. Like, this is, I don't know, it's just ridiculous to say the least. And a bad attempt at a con, I would say, to say the most. You're not fooling anybody with this. We're not going. Nobody is gonna say anything any less, think anything any less. Judging your son. We don't have a jail to put him in. We don't have a heaven or hell to send him to. People have their opinion. People are looking at the case. People are taking in the information as it comes in. And people are formulating their opinions as information comes in. And that is just wisdom. That's just good common sense. And one thing I don't like is for somebody to suggest that I shouldn't have my good common sense because it impedes your strategy of advancement against other people. Yeah, no. Don't try to make me put down good wisdom because you need me to be a fool. Yeah. Nobody cares and nobody believes it, and we're just not going. We're just not going for it. We're not going for it. We're not going for it. All right. So thank you all again for stopping by. This has been Kelly's Wordy Reaction, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.